Hey guys, welcome to our first live stream here at the Scribes Table. I am really excited for Gabe from Rosarium today. Gabe and I met probably towards the end of last year, and we really started to become essentially friends in battle, building apps together and things like that. Gabe is an amazing creator, very passionate, has a really interesting background in finance, and then leaving a world of finance to come into a journey of faith and following God's call to be able to build this app called Rosarium, an app for Catholics to pray. Gabe is probably one of the most perseverant and ambitious people that I know personally, and I'm really excited to chat with him about his philosophy of building Rosarium. So without further ado, hey Gabe, how you doing? Thank you for being
Hey,
here.
how's it going? Oh, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure. And thank you for that nice introduction. I don't know if I can live up to it, but I try.
Yes, and I think if I remember correctly, we met towards the end of last year, right?
Yeah, something like that. Because I started my streaming journey in October when I started developing Rosarium, and yeah, it's been great. Like just meeting great people on the internet. Meeting you has been really game changing, both in the aspect of like how you approach your faith and your understanding
Mm-hmm.
of the Christian faith, Christian history, and it's been great talking to you about the faith. Talking about also you have more experience on developing apps and launching startups and endeavors. So it's also been great to have you there to advise me on my journey. And in general, yeah, you're a great friend to have. So it's a pleasure.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I've really enjoyed some of our conversation, especially the parts where we can agree but also
Hmm.
disagree in full respect
Right.
towards one another, especially both in the faith and even approaching how how we approach even work and business and things like that. You've certainly, believe it or not, taught me a lot, especially about the finance side, but not only that, but like how you approach business and persevere in your faith. I love the fact that you're so vision driven, essentially,
Mm,
right? Like
thank you.
you have a vision, essentially like a calling almost, and then
Yeah, I do feel that way, like a vocation.
yes. So why don't you go ahead and give a kind of a quick background about yourself and
Sure.
how you came where you were and how you came to Rosario.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I'm a pretty. I mean, I try to stay consistent, but I move around a lot, especially when I was younger.
Hmm.
I jumped around because I didn't. I was searching for, I guess, that vocation. So I'm from the south of Spain, Granada. It's a beautiful city, and so when I was in high school, at some point around like when I was 15 or 14, I decided I wanted to go to the United States to study there. And I mean, there wasn't much substance behind that decision. I just had seen too many movies, I suppose, and I wanted to get out of the house and do something, ambitious or whatever. I was always just trying to feel that sense of success or purpose or something. And I was just in the dark in that respect. I didn't realize that until later.
Hmm.
But in that respect, I grew up in the faith as a Catholic, like many people in Spain, like going to church with family, and my father was a very intellectual man. I mean, continues to be obviously, but I'm just saying, like he always put a lot of emphasis on rationalizing your decisions and your understanding of faith and stuff. So I had always been able to defend the Catholic faith, even though I didn't quite live it. I didn't know that, like I didn't recognize that, but I didn't have an actual relationship with Christ myself. It was more like I was Catholic. I could argument why being Catholic was the right thing to do and why that religion, changes your life. But I didn't actually experience that change. Or I didn't live up to those. So I didn't even try to live up really to those ideas
Hmm.
and to that faith. And then I moved to the U.S. I applied to colleges. I know I learned English, and then I got into some colleges, and that convinced my father to help me get over there, my family, and so I ended up going to NYU. I had the option, actually, funny enough, between the main colleges I was deciding was between Notre Dame and NYU.
Hmm.
So I remember there was this American guy who lived here in Spain, who was a friend of family, who was very excited about my decision to study in the United States, and he was helping me through the common application process and all that, which was very foreign to me. And when I told him that I got accepted into Notre Dame, the biggest Catholic,
Hmm.
college in the world, he
Yep.
thought I was gonna clearly choose Notre Dame. And I sometimes wonder what would have been in my life if I did that. But the idea of New York was really enticing to me, especially at that point in my life in
Hmm.
which I wasn't that. I didn't have such a deep relationship with the faith. It was more of a very superficial one.
Hmm.
Anyway, I decided to go to New York. I was there, and then that's when I fell away from the faith. I stopped going to church as much. There was not that much of a foundation behind
Hmm.
it. And then the more I moved away from the faith, the more I started making like poor decisions in my personal life and in general, and I started to drift away, both morally and emotionally and such. And I didn't quite correlate it to the fact that I was away from the faith. I just thought, that's how life works. You grow up and you suddenly are facing the pressures of real life. And anyway, then more decisions turned to, I was getting worse and worse in terms of my morals and my decisions in life. It was turning more and more very relativistic and very cynical. And I continue to live in this hypocrisy of still believing of myself a Catholic in that respect. I suppose if somebody were to ask, I could again defend the faith and such. And then I got to a really low point. I was actually in a relationship with this girl, and the relationship kind of fell apart around my poor decision making and my immorality. And I kind of got to that really low point, and I repented in that respect. Like I remember it was around Holy Week too, and I went to this Catholic church around my campus at St. Boniface, which ended up becoming like my main parish when I was living in Brooklyn. Because the whole time I was in New York, I was in Brooklyn. But yeah, I just kind of broke down. I was just like, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know. I feel so lost. I felt like very, I didn't have much hope going. So I just kind of led my life in the hands of God, but like in a very real sense at that point. Which I was like, okay, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know how to, carry a good life. I don't make good decisions. So let me just actually start trying to trust Christ as a real presence that can guide me and can help me live a better life, a happier life. And then through that journey during Holy Week and then coming to Easter, and it was a very interior, in my interior life and spiritual life is very life-changing, although the implications of it obviously take longer to kind of play out and actually change my character and my habits. And I still continue to struggle with overcoming, both temptations and my tendency to just be chaotic or destructive. But I mean, the beautiful thing, and I remember a priest told me about that, it's like the faith changes you, like how a flower grows, in which you don't really notice it when you're looking at it. But then you look back, and I look back at my life sometimes, and I'm like, wow, I'm in such a different place now, thanks to Christ. And yeah, as a result of that, I started going to church regularly and take confession and try to change my life in that respect. But still, so I studied mechanical engineering. And I was like, okay, I don't really want to be an engineer. Like I was good at school and stuff, and I really learned a lot, and I find it very, I love what I learned, but I didn't want to be an engineer as a profession. So I decided, okay, and I like finance. I like the idea of capitalism as a measure of people's effort and a way to organize, society and resources. So I decided to go into finance. I find it very interesting and stuff. I had a very good friend of mine, also continues to be one of my best friends. He was very passionate about finance. He continues to be, and he kind of instilled that passion in me as well. And then we remember reading Security Analysis by Benjamin Graham and reading The Intelligent Investor and books like that, like value investing. So I started transitioning into finance. I worked after college. I worked in as a consultant for like a Korean company, still kind of in between business and engineering, because it was an engineering company. But then eventually I just decided to take the step and to register for the CFA, which is the Chartered Financial Analyst. I got pretty high regarded accreditation or certificate, or it's a charter. And the journey transition was still quite chaotic in the sense like I didn't have experience in finance, so I couldn't find a job there. So I was doing minor jobs while I was transitioning. At the same time, I was in a pretty chaotic personal relationship as well with my girlfriend at the time. And but eventually I landed my job in finance, and then that's what started my career in finance, which lasted about 3 years or so. First at a German bank, and then later a Canadian bank, both based in New York. And then continued to take the CFAs. I've completed the 3 levels of the CFA, but getting to the point of actually finding my vocation was when I was settled in finance, working for the Canadian bank. I was feeling like pretty empty, like my life, in the sense like I just worked really hard and I continued to improve and strive in my professional life. But it was kind of like a separate thing from my religious life, which continued to grow in my spiritual life. But it was more like, and I've always been very passionate about video games and interactive experiences and stuff. And my kind of goal, like in the back of my head, was like, okay, when I become rich and I have all this money, then I'll start my own studio and make games and tell stories through video games and through interactive experiences. But then until that, there was no. Are you still there, Johnny? I don't know if we lost him for a second. But yeah, I mean, I'll continue just telling the story for the sake of the recording. But basically, yeah. So at that point, there was a moment in which that I got laid off from the bank at Canaccord, this Canadian bank, and I was like, oh, this is a great opportunity to actually do my own thing. And I was like, oh, let me start a research company because I was doing equity research for them. Oh, hey, how you doing? Yeah, I lost you for a second. And yeah, I was just telling how at one point, like, I got laid off from the Canadian bank, and that's what gave me an opportunity. I'm like, I'm gonna do my own thing, but I still wanted to like kind of continue down the line of finance.
Yeah.
But it was like I think 2 summers ago when I came to visit Spain, like I usually do. And I was talking to my father about that whole, okay, I'm gonna first become, more successful in finance and become rich,
Mm-hmm.
and then start studying. And he was like, oh, that's kind of a stupid plan. Like, why don't you just focus on what you really want to do, even if you have to start
Mm-hmm.
from the bottom, so to speak, and then start to grow that way. Because if not, you're gonna become very disconnected with the craft itself, and also you can get really lost in that finance world or in that other professional career. So then I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, okay, so let me do that, and that's when I decided to come back to Spain and leave behind the whole American Odyssey. And that's where I am. I'm right now back in Spain, in the south, in Granada, in my hometown, and just been since October or so. Working. My first project is Rosarium,
Mm-hmm.
because at first I was working on a concept for a game that's telling the story of Henry the
Mm-hmm.
Fourth, Henry the Fifth, when he's a prince and then becomes Henry the Fourth. It's a self-actualization story and a game. But I was inspired by a conference that a history professor here in Granada gave about the Rosary and about the history of the Rosary. And it's a
Mm-hmm.
prayer that I've come to discover as I, came back to the faith, and has helped me a lot. It's a very rich prayer in many respects. It's very
Mm-hmm.
meditative, and it's centered in the Gospels. It's very Marian, obviously, in nature, and the Virgin Mary has been a great help in getting closer to Christ as well to me. And
Mm-hmm.
so I was like, oh, let me make my first project something smaller that is like this, which then turned up not to be that much smaller. Also, it continued to be very complicated, but I'm enjoying the challenge.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where I started working on Rosarium as a way to make the Rosary an interactive experience that takes advantage of the many uh, technology innovations that have happened in the recent years, and the design innovations around building habits, like apps like
Mm-hmm.
Duolingo or other ones in which you make things very adaptable to the routines of people, and you take
Yes.
advantage of the mobile phone to
Like a
build a
game. Yeah.
routine and to build incentives, decide to gamify a habit. And
So,
yeah, that's the concept behind, or the motivation behind Rosarium.
um, it's actually kind of interesting because you said that your dad is a very
Yeah.
rational person, and I know you're a very
Yeah.
rational person. That led to a decision to leave finance in New York and move to the
Right,
south of
right.
Spain
Yeah, good point.
and come and build games, which is kind of a
Right,
very
right.
interesting, just a thing of note
Yeah.
there, right?
Yeah, that's a good point.
I think that that represents a good balance between the passion and
Mm-hmm.
the mind, right? Where you can
Right.
use your mind for your passion. It doesn't have to be two separate entities there. You could
No,
say,
100%.
if I don't do this now, which is really powerful about your story, if I don't do this now,
Yeah.
then I might not have the opportunity later. Not even from
Yep.
a, not even from a, even from a practical, not even just from a practical level, which is
Right.
true. You might have
Right.
kids and things like that. But
Yep.
even from a psychological level,
Yeah,
hey, like
100%.
if I suppress my passion too much now, I might not
Mm-hmm.
have the passion for it later. It might actually a little bit go away. So I want
Yeah.
to cultivate that passion,
Yeah.
which is, I know the Rosarium has to do with rose gardens and things like that. So I
Yeah.
know that's sort of interesting. Um, so that was a really great intro on the motivation behind Rosarium.
Right.
How did you actually decide that this
Mm-hmm.
was the project that you wanted to build? Was it like always when you left, you're like, I wanted to build a Rosarium
Mm.
project, or was that actually a design process for you to actually figure out, I want to commit to this, I want to commit to building
Mm.
a Rosary app? How was that like for you?
Yeah, it was. I mean, many things in my life I've come to discover them through kind of trusting the, like, what is that called? Divine providence, in which is like, the more I try to be too strict or too stringent on
Mm-hmm.
my decision process, the more I get lost in my own little paranoias.
Mm-hmm.
So to me, it was more of a discovery process in which I found myself, I found a lot of value in the rosary and how to use that as a way to hone my skills and to like it became a very interesting project as I got started on it. So at
Hmm.
first it was kind of an idea of like, oh, what if I try to make an interactive rosary, right? And then as I thought more about it and I started thinking of different concepts for it, is when I
Hmm.
really started to fall in love with the idea of it not only just being a way for me to practice and to get better at the idea of making applications or games, but like it's a great way to actually help people get closer to the rosary as a prayer, and to build a habit with that, and to make it much more approachable in that respect. Which again, people will continue to pray the rosary in the traditional way, and that's completely fine. I do it sometimes. It's just more to people that are not as exposed to it. It's a good way to find a different approach to it. So yeah, it's kind of hard for me to pinpoint exactly at what point I became committed to the project. But
Hmm.
at one point I was just working on it and I wanted to get it done, and I continued to, like, even after release, as you know, I continued to work on improving it. And the
Hmm.
way the app, we can talk about it a little bit more, is designed
Hmm.
also incentivizes the creation of new aspects for the app as the community unlocks them.
Hmm.
So yeah, it's a very living thing at this point. So that's a part that I really enjoy about it too as well, which is I'm evolving and the application is evolving with my journey in learning, like development.
So you, it looks like it was a process to commit to the project, which is
Yeah.
kind of common. I think it's kind of common to go through that process after you've committed to the product, right?
Right.
Now, was there kind of, I suppose there's already a kind of structure that you're following because the rosary is very structured
Hmm.
prayer, right?
Right.
Your goal in the initial, like, let's say you committed just now, your goal was
Yeah.
initially to just, like, what was kind of going through your head was like, okay, I'm just going to open up Unity and start coding, or like,
Yeah.
did you know anything about coding when you started? Like, how was that
No.
process, like, kind of getting that kick started?
Yeah, it was, I mean, yeah, pretty similar to what you're saying, which is like, let me just get started. Like I wanted to get started on a project and I'm like, this sounds interesting enough of a challenge.
Hmm.
So it started more like that, like let me see if I can get it done. And then it's like it evolved into having an actual, like seeing the value of it for the user
Hmm.
beyond just for me as a builder.
Hmm.
And that's how kind of became more of a bigger thing, bigger than
Hmm.
my own approach to just improving my skills. So yeah, it's kind of a hybrid, I would say a hybrid purpose in that sense, in which is both I'm learning to be a better builder as I'm building it, and I'm also, helping people that find it useful to use the app. So, and again, it's also a journey in many other respects, not just on the engineering aspect of it, but on the business side of things, of knowing how to, I mean, I'm still learning a lot about how to promote it and how to get the word out there, and how to, let people know about Rosarium and about
Hmm.
how it can help them in their prayer journey. And yeah, in the respect of it being a structured prayer, that actually is what I found very enticing about it, is that even though the structure itself of the prayer is not something that I'm modifying, it's uh, how you wrap yourself around it, like how you can uh, immerse yourself in the prayer of the rosary through different avenues. And it's just that, because, like, for example, when I pray the rosary, I go either to church here at the parish and I pray with the community there, or if I'm at home, it's harder for me to kind of find that sense of community, of like something that drives me to get started on the prayer of the rosary. Then once you're in the flow of it, it follows the same structure, so that's much easier. But what I
Hmm.
was really focused on the design, and I continue to be, is how do I create these different avenues for people to arrive to that moment of contemplation that the rosary provides.
That's interesting. And so we'll go a little
Mhm.
bit technical and then we'll go into a little bit more
Yeah.
philosophy.
Okay.
Now, this was built with Unity, right?
Yeah.
And was that like always kind of an outset? Like, what was your decision? Why did you choose Unity to build this instead of like just making a mobile app? Was that just happenstance or what?
Yeah, so I mean, again, it goes back to the fact that I'm very inexperienced with developing and stuff. I'm a little bit better, but I wanted to, because my journey is to make video games and to have my own studio and make like telling interesting stories and creating interesting worlds and interactive experiences. I was deciding on, okay, let me start learning one way to do that, and Unity was to me the most attractive engine. Again, I
Mm-hmm.
don't know if it was the right decision. No, it was right because it was the one that I made in that respect. So I had to choose one, and I thought Unity was the best for the type of projects that I would be doing now. And I'm really happy with that decision. Like, I think it's a great engine for developing, especially 2D games, and the level of resources that are available. I think the business model too, even though it has had some controversy, I think it's a good business model that they have going on. And
I agree.
So yeah, I started using Unity, and then that, because then I decided to do the Rosarium project. Then I'm like, okay, let me build it on Unity. So then sometimes I've talked to other people that are more experienced, and they're like, why didn't you build the app with other software native? So because it would have been more efficient, or you wouldn't need to deal with all this other stuff. But again, it goes back to the hybrid purpose of the project, which is I wanted to learn how to build something on Unity, and that's why I built Rosarium on Unity. But it has become a pretty useful in many regards, and the fact that I know how to use the engine much better now helps me in the next project that I'm working on and future projects. So that's the reason why I went with Unity and C#.
No, I actually think that makes a lot of sense, because even though it's a commercial project, right? Kind of upskilling, like, we all understand that we have dream projects that we want to make, but we have to step our way there, right? We can't just like, oh, let me open up my engine and start making Skyrim or something like that. I can't
Right.
I have to like kind of build my skill set there. So I have to pick a project that's challenging enough. I'm going to push the goalpost enough that I'm going to get there, but it's not like, it's not like too ambitious or too simple. Like, you have to find that good balance right in between. So what was your like routine like while you were building? I mean, I know this, but the audience might not. Like, what was your routine like while you're building? It's kind of a crazy routine, I would say, for any average developer, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to even for me to define the routine, because it's something that I'm still learning to implement and to be consistent about. I mean, that is also, it brings me to the reason why I started the Cordero Católico Twitch channel and the YouTube channel and stuff, because it's like, for me, it all started again. I guess I'm starting to see a pattern in that, which is I start things because they help me become a better person and improve myself, and that also brings a value to the people around me, or I hope so. So the idea of starting on Twitch was to build that discipline and that routine, because that's an issue that I continue to struggle with. I've always struggled with it since I was young. I've never really had trouble in school. I actually did very well in school, both in high school and in college. And then finding a job was not hard at all for me. Then getting into finance, people found the CFA and challenging, the work in investment banking, but I didn't. So that is like a two-sided coin, which is like, yeah, it's easy to become successful, but it makes you very it made me very lazy in that respect. Not lazy like I didn't drive results, but lazy like I knew I could do more with my time and with my talents, but I just kind of became complacent. So by doing the live and being live in front of people, and that helped me build that routine and that accountability, because I was, also the fact that I'm working alone as a solo developer for now, it helps me have that community around the people that I'm meeting. And it's become a great journey in that respect too, because I've discovered the great rewarding aspects of doing things live and on the internet, exposing yourself and not being afraid to just speak your mind and just be out there. Like, this is a new world in which everybody's on the internet one way or another. So
you stream every aspect of development live.
Yeah.
Almost every day. I think it's pretty close to every day. I think I've seen you miss like a couple of days here and there, but for months and months and months, every line of code, even in front of ChatGPT and all of every bit of it is live, right?
Yeah.
I mean, to me, that's just crazy. Like, I think like that's wow. And we're talking like multiple hours of the day, right? Like,
100%. And I'm actually trying to get back to doing that more, because when we were getting closer to crunch time, and during crunch time, I kind of felt a little bit more because of the pressure of it that I'm learning to handle. But it was the best time when I was doing exactly what you're saying. That was when I was being most productive, when I was enjoying it the most, is being live every day. And I'm a pretty talkative guy. Like, I actually have a hard time shutting up. So it helps me in that respect too, of just like being able to think out loud through the process and being live in the development. Also the help that I've gotten, the advice from you and other people that are more experienced in this or other fields. And I love that about it. Like, it really helps me a lot to work, to be able to stream the whole process. And I look forward to doing it more and more. I was telling you about how for this new project now I'm going to move to the beach, to an apartment that we have there, so to be able to concentrate more. And I want to stream more hours, because it mainly just helps me work more. And that's really my main focus these days, beyond results, beyond how the app does. Because I know everything, and I've learned that through my life, and I continue to learn. It's like, people, and me, one of the first ones, we worry, I think, too much about results and
Mm,
about goals and stuff. And I think goals are very important. Like
mhm,
you want to have a destination.
mhm,
But what I found is that the most important thing is like working hard and focusing
mhm.
on that. On how can I put more hours in, and passionate hours, and focus and do things. So that's where being live and being in a community online helps me a lot with that. So yeah.
Yeah, I initially came to Twitch to try to find people to just see if they're passionate. Like I wanted to be around
Yeah.
people who are passionate about things.
Mhm.
Now it's kind of interesting. I kind of see Twitch as a place, almost like a virtual office, where,
Right. Yeah.
but
Yeah.
it's all the people that I
Very true.
like. It's all the people that I just want to hang
Yeah.
around with,
It's like an
and
incubator kind of, right?
yeah, and there's like super super passionate people,
Yeah.
super interested in what they're doing. I was actually asked over the weekend this very
Mhm.
interesting question, um, which is, how do people, like, they were watching me watch Twitch and they were asking
Right.
me, it's kind of crazy that all of these people just work on their own stuff, and they have all this passion for what they do, because this
Right.
person was essentially a programmer, and they're like, well, I'm not going to work a single hour of my day if I don't get paid for it, right? And I showed
Right.
them like a huge list of people on Twitch, and they're like, yeah, look at all these people, and they're just passionate about what they're doing. And I've been
Mhm.
recently talking about passion and how important that is in keep doing it, because otherwise you just burn out. Otherwise you're
Yeah.
just
100%.
normalized to that. So you're obviously building Rosarium, and you mentioned Crunch. Tell me that process. I think I probably
Yeah.
contributed. I'll take at least 5% of the credit in contributing a
You
little
can
bit
take
towards
all
it.
the credit. I mean, I
I
don't
gotta
even
take all the
know.
credit at this point. Um, what was that process like, actually getting Rosarium released? Was that a different cycle for you, or was that a different?
Yeah, hundred
Yeah.
percent, 100%. I mean, and
Mhm,
there's many things that I want to improve in that respect about being very disciplined that and dealing with that pressure. But yeah, it helped me. The idea that you really brought up was, well, I mean, there were two aspects that were very instrumental. One is that getting the project out, and like getting the project known, like those two aspects,
mhm,
like one focusing on having the app live and having it working, even if that's a minimum viable product, so that people
mhm,
can use it, I can get feedback, so that I can have it live and see how it's doing, and what things to improve. And
mhm,
actually, so getting that up and setting a deadline, you were very adamant about that, and that really helped me set a deadline to, okay, we're going to release the app at this day, we're going to have it ready. If we need to cut some
mhm,
features out, that's part of it, and then we can work on adding them later. But
mhm,
having a product that stands on it as it's on its own,
mhm,
out there and released at a certain date, really drove me to to streamline the process, to be more disciplined and more hardworking in that aspect. And then the idea of getting it out there, having a landing page and
mhm,
promote it. And again, these are things that I'm still working on and learning to do better. But yeah, just having that more structured drive towards a specific objective
mhm.
has helped me a lot. So yeah, it's been great.
And yeah, no, and I think you've come to a good balance of the
Right.
right structure for you, right? And that's, I
Right.
think,
Yeah.
every person at the end of the day, is that they eventually figure out, am I the kind of person that needs all of my tasks laid out from start to finish, or
Hmm.
am I the kind of person that just brings up Unity and see whatever happens? And you're kind of
Right.
figuring out, okay, so I'm not going to completely neglect marketing. I'm not going to completely neglect this, but at the same time, I'm not going to go and like double down and like become a sales based person, because I want to preserve, right, essentially that
Yeah.
vision for Rosarium. Yeah. Um,
Yeah, it's
and
something that I continue to discover about what is my identity as a builder, as how I like to do things, even in with Rosarium, right? Like even the way I
Mhm,
design the app, in which, so just to give a little bit of context with Rosarium, right? There's a flower each day that is corresponding to the saint of the day, or to the solemnity in the
mhm,
liturgical calendar, in the Catholic liturgical calendar, and then that flower grows in in the, depending on how many people are praying the rosary, right? And that
mhm,
flower at the end of the day is planted into a garden, right?
mhm,
And then there's different gardens, and as the gardens are completed, the goal is to have new features ready for the app, right? So even
mhm,
that aspect, like I really like that organic kind of structure that drives me to improve the app and to
mhm,
release new features and stuff. in which it's like now the community is using the app and has an expectation that helps them come back to the app and build a habit of praying the rosary, and it
Mm-hmm.
helps me build a habit of releasing and coming up with new features and new things to add to the app and having them done on time for them to be released when the gardens are completed.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I mean with kind of finding your own way of doing things, and that's what I'm learning more. That I like that aspect of putting myself in situations in which I now have to survive. In that sense, it's like
Mm-hmm.
I don't, I because it goes back to that idea of I easily become complacent with my
Mm-hmm.
position. If I don't put myself in situations in which I have to survive, I have to make it work, then I don't have as much of a drive to get it done. So even though
Mm-hmm.
I'm learning and I'm enjoying the process of improving the app and getting new features, if I don't have that specific deadline or that specific, looming
Mm-hmm.
aspect of it, I can easily become complacent. So yeah, that's what I've been learning to do more and more, of like
Now,
building a structure around an objective.
now Rosarium has a kind of unique art style, right? How did you
Thank
come
you.
up with that art style? Yeah, I love the beauty of it. And how
Oh,
did you
thank
come up
you.
with that art style?
I don't know. I mean, it just made sense in my head. I mean, many things like go back to kind of a certain intuition that I, ascribe a little bit to divine intervention, to my own character and stuff. It's just like
Mm-hmm.
it just made sense. It was the vision for it, that it's like the rosary. It's a beautiful prayer that is
Mm-hmm.
very based on the tradition of the Catholic Church, especially how it came about in medieval times and stuff. It's like it had a kind of this medieval aspect in my head, but that is fresh and lively, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm full of like this garden energy. So that's why, like, the idea of there's people that have said it was the rosary being like, you're presenting roses to the Virgin Mary with each Hail Mary, right? So the idea of that correlating with flowers, but then being very founded on an actual tradition of how the Hail Mary was developed through the tradition, the Catholic
Mm-hmm.
tradition, and how it came about the rosary in a times of uncertainty and a time of
Mm-hmm.
confusion in the faith and the dogma that the
Mm-hmm.
Catholic Church was trying to propose.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's how I came to Ghana. That aesthetic,
Mm-hmm.
it was an organic process in which it just looked right to me, like
Like
kind of
the
this
kind of
like
stained glass
colorful
window.
traditional stained glass window. Yeah, that's a
Yeah,
good way
yeah,
to
that's
put
so
it. Yeah.
beautiful. Um, so I feel like uh, it would. I want to get into a little bit about philosophy, but before I get into
Right.
that, there's obviously um, there's this 800-pound gorilla in the room, which is Hollow,
Okay.
right? And there's
Oh yeah,
a little
yeah. I love Halo.
other apps that kind of come
Yeah.
around. Was Hollow at all like an inspiration for you? I
Oh,
mean,
a
they're a
hundred
massive.
percent, a
Yeah,
hundred percent, yeah,
yeah.
a
How did
hundred
that
percent.
play
I mean,
into it?
one of the main reasons why I decided to make the Rosarium app was realizing the amount of people that actually find it very useful to take advantage of their mobile device and the internet and the
Mhm.
community, the online communities, to improve and to deepen their journey in the faith. So yeah, I mean, I've been a user of Halo for a long while, and I found it a very instrumental app in my faith journey. I continue to use it pretty much every day to
Mhm.
pray. And but again, it's like I'm trying to fill different functions that Halo,
Mhm.
in my opinion, didn't address. Not because they just do a different thing. They're much more audio based. They're much more.
Mhm.
They're very driven by the people that help build those audio prayers and the community that they build. Like, they have specific challenges, I guess you call. For example, right now there's a consecration to Saint Joseph that helps you explore the figure of Saint Joseph
Mhm.
as the foster father of Jesus and the husband of the Virgin Mary. And then there's other ones, like, for example, when the Pope was elected, the new Pope, about understanding the life and the background of it. So you're exploring parts of dogma and Catholic history and Catholic tradition and the faith and the Gospels. And at the same time, you're part of a community that helps you build a habit and
Mhm.
such. But it didn't have what I really love about video games and about interactive
Mhm.
experiences, which is something that is mechanically intertwined with the action. It's not
Mhm.
just a conduit for a prayer like Halo would be, in which it's an
Mhm.
app that basically serves you audio prayers in a structure, right? Like some type of audio books, but they're all like, they have different purposes. Like, as I was saying, the consecration to Saint Joseph, or exploring the Bible, exploring the church fathers or the desert fathers, right?
Mhm.
The thing with Rosarium, I was like, oh, I really felt inspired by the idea of using the medium of the mobile phone, and how many people, everybody has one,
Mhm.
everybody is very connected to their devices. not as a way to reject it and be like, oh, this is away from God, and we should all just throw away our
Yeah.
devices and just be in a temple. And like, it's just, I think it's very naive to think like that, and also counterproductive. I think you got to embrace human
Yeah.
innovation and the world as it is, and go like how Christ does, in the sense, go where people are and not expect people to come where you are. So, and that's how helped me. Many people have been helped by Halo in that respect. So that's what I'm trying to do with Rosarium from a different angle, is
Yeah.
get the rosary to people and not expect people to come to the rosary.
And there's actually probably an even further point in the sense that, people are spending their time doing something on their mobile phones. If
Right.
the faith-based, if the faith is not there, right? If
Right.
our faith is not
Yep.
there, they're already doing something on there,
Yeah,
right? So
exactly.
they're already, so building these kinds of products is actually really important, because otherwise we lose we lose these eyes to Netflix or Instagram, where
Yep.
they could be fed, but there's reality is they're going to be fed more pollution than they are, right? Food, spiritual food.
100%.
So I think that that's actually really important. That's, I'm building for the church too, and it's a really big
Right.
challenge,
Yeah.
because you have to convince people that these things are good for you, right? And then you have to convince them that, you have to convince on one side there's this resistance towards technology, and then this other side that's like there's this love for entertainment, and you got to like put that in there and say, hey, I'm right there in the middle, I'll meet you where you're at. But
exactly.
yeah, so I think that that's a really good and interesting exposition there. So you're building Rosarium now, and you're going to keep supporting Rosarium now.
Oh yeah, 100%.
But you've kind of started on your next project already.
Oh yeah,
Can you talk about that a little bit? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, this one is, again, it just, I like what you were saying about passion being very important. I think it definitely is, that to let that driving force, that flame, that spirit within you work, and not be so focused on results. And I mean, I tend to think of in that, through that prism of like, what is it that I want to convey? What is it that I can convey that I find beautiful and valuable in the world? So my next project now, I've come to fall in love a lot with the cultural tradition in Spain of romances, which are a series of songs, popular songs that have conglomerated through Spanish history, that tell different stories. They came about in different times in history. I mean, usually around through like the 14th to the 18th century and then onward, but different eras with different themes, different subject matters. So because I find that's a very beautiful thing that many people are not exposed to, the same way the rosary is a beautiful prayer that many people are not exposed to. This next project that I'm coining Trovador for now, it's basically it's more of a game it's kind of a hybrid of a rhythm game with a platform game, in which the kind of the main idea is like this guy from the future. It's like a musician, but he lives in a future that is similar, like on an ethics or on a moral standpoint, or even on the state of people today, which is like there's so much technology, there's an overwhelming amount of possibilities and ways to do things that people easily become not only complacent, but even just they don't want to do things because everything is so easy in that respect, or there's so many possibilities that you become like kind of locked up. So there's this musician that is kind of like doesn't find a purpose in creating songs because everything is like out there, it's already been created, or it's already been regurgitated, or it can be innovated through technology. But then he, for some fortuitous reason, he ends up traveling back to the past, similar to kind of how in the Mark Twain's novel, a Yankee in the court of King Arthur. He just finds himself in the 16th century Spain at the what is called the golden age of Spanish culture, when all these romances are starting to be compiled, and these stories, these beautiful, rich stories, are putting into songs and starting to be compiled. And now he arrives to this time in which his ability and his instrument that he carries with him, which is able to kind of make these new sounds that these people cannot hear, that even find them magical. But for him, it's also a journey of finding the beauty in creation, and the beauty in being an artist, and conveying something, and using the beauty that is around you to create even more beauty and to give it a new aspect. And then the game itself is kind of moving. It's a similar the way that I'm thinking of, because I'm still in very early concept stage, of kind of how in Mario World you're moving through these different levels within an overarching world map. And that world map will be kind of like a 16th century Spanish city. and then you're exploring these levels, and these levels each are like an NPC with a very rich story that translate into the songs, because many of the songs have a very narrative. I mean, all of them are very
Yeah.
narrative focused. That's why the name romance, which is where the word romantic comes from, which is basically just a story. So he's interacting with these characters that have very human stories that correlate to every other human story even now.
Hmm.
And now he's learning these songs, he's learning appreciate his art for creating music, and at the same time he's learning these very traditional and very beautiful Spanish songs. And the main mechanic of each one of the levels is that you playing the song in a rhythm based game, but at the same time you're trying to be strategic about how you place those notes, because those notes become platforms upon which you then the song replays in this remixed version, and you
Mm.
have to traverse the level and be able to make your way out. So the metaphor, I guess, the symbolism behind that is that as you're learning something, you're
Mm.
learning this romance song, you are putting your part to it, your element of like innovation,
Hmm.
and that innovation allows you not only to interiorize the song, but to give it a
Mm.
new aspect that frees you and makes it yours. And but
Interesting.
again, things are shaping up still. But yeah, that's kind of what is driving me now
No,
to be passionate about how I'm gonna
I never
go in.
thought about it. So I've been watching some aspects of your stream. I never thought
Uh-huh.
about it quite like that. But that's actually really
Okay.
beautiful that it's you take something that's already beautiful and then you do have to internalize it and make it your own. But then the way
Yeah.
you make it your own is through the game design, right? Like so there's this
Yeah.
thing that you're doing in the game design, and then
Yeah.
you're kind of essentially creating a music flavor of your own. But you're starting off with
Yeah.
something that's beautiful.
Yeah.
One thing I will highlight is the fact that I love the fact that like you can you double down on your identity and your culture to
Mm.
be able
Thank
to
you.
inform these games and things like that. Even the
Yeah.
the Spanish tradition that you mentioned, right? I love
Mhm.
that. I love that you kind of double down because I actually think a lot of creators don't double down enough on who
Right.
they are. They try to go and like try to create some sort of foreign, thing to them. And that
Yeah.
might be important because they're playing that, but the reality is like, hey, you have this unique life experience that you
Hmm.
can put it. And so you've taken these songs, these Spanish songs, and made them into a game where you're playing through the levels, right? Now,
Yeah.
what is the gameplay actually like for this thing? I think there's some
Mhm.
level of it's going to be a 2D game from what I understand,
Yeah.
right?
So think about it. It's a hybrid of the Super Mario world will be the overarching world. So you're
Hmm.
moving in this, interacting with NPCs and having a dialogue, and exploring the human aspects of a journey of an artist from
Hmm.
exploring to creating and to
Yeah.
succeeding, and then even there's an arch of like from that success to kind of coming back to that creative aspect.
Hmm.
And then each one of the levels is more similar in gameplay to how a Guitar Hero or a rhythm based game is, in which is like the song that is playing out is linked to the gameplay, and you have to be on time
Mm.
with the rhythm. And whether you are more or less successful in keeping up with the rhythm, that is reflected in the gameplay. But then the extra level that I'm trying to add to this, and I'm still figuring out how I'm going to go about that, is that the consequence is not just a score. It's not like I want to get these notes right so I can have a
Hmm.
higher score. Is that you're trying to create the level that then you have to traverse. So
Mm. Okay.
by you going through the song, the notes are coming down at different times, and the song you interiorize in the song much more because you have to be on time with the notes. But you're not just playing the notes; you're being creative with each one of the notes, because depending on how you place, if you place them on time, it will determine how permanent that piece is later when you got to traverse it. So imagine
Mm.
that you miss the note by a little bit, then that piece that you placed at that time, when you jump on it in the second stage, it will evaporate much quicker. But if you click it right on time, then it will become permanent. So you
Mm.
want to be careful in how you play in the first stage, because that will make it easier for you in the second stage. And that also gives dimensionality to the player, because on one aspect you can very focus on the musical aspect, and then
Hmm.
create a very easy to traverse platform level because you were really good at placing the right pieces at the right
Mm.
time and you were doing them on time. Or you can just be like, no, I really care about making it challenging for myself, so I don't have to worry as much about you can be offbeat, like even that
Yeah.
aspect in music of approaching something that is very structured and applying your own flavor and making it
Mm.
offbeat, or changing the rhythm pattern for your own
Yeah.
advantage. And then that makes it harder for you to traverse it, but you made it that way your own. So then
Mm.
now in the second stage is more similar to how it would be. The game, I think it's called Downwell. Is basically
Hmm.
it's yeah. So you're falling down a well, and you got
Yeah.
to kind of dodge this obstacle. So imagine that, but going upwards. So instead of falling and you dodging, you're moving up, but you got to move up on these blocks that you put through the first stage of the game.
There's this
And that would
game,
be, I guess, the main gameplay.
I want to say it's called Dyad, Dyad, I believe.
I don't know that one. Let's see.
I might be butchering the name, but essentially is soundscapes. Now it has a little bit of a hallucinatory effect, if you understand what I'm saying. But you you essentially are hitting musical notes, and it's very like hallucinatory. Like the game design itself is very relaxing because it's in a stage of using some sort of chemicals to get there, so you're having these chemicals, you're hallucinating, but then it's about the music that you experience while you're in this very relaxed stage. Very, very relaxed stage. And so anyway, like it's basically about a musical, but it's so beautiful because we all think of music as different things, but like in this sense, it's so relaxing. Like the way you're essentially falling through a tunnel and you're hitting musical notes while you're falling through a tunnel.
Oh, nice.
Guitar Hero, I would say, to contrast, is very stressful because like Guitar Hero is about keeping this is more about going through a world. Yeah, it almost feels like going through a world. And what you're saying is actually a good mix where you're actually, there is a thing that you're trying to do, which is keep up with the music that's going on.
Notes, right.
But you could actually technically make it your own. Like there's elements you can make.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to like. That's the challenging part of the design that I'm still figuring out. But that is what I'm trying to get to. It's like, how do I make it? In which is like, and I find it interesting what you're bringing up because it's like it determines the experience of the player what the ultimate objective is. In that game of Die, right, the objective is to be in this creative flow state, right? So then the gameplay has to bring you there. In Guitar Hero, the objective is to be precise, to be a good player in that sense, a good instrument player. So then you're very focused on hitting things on time, and then it becomes challenging because it's much more overwhelming as the levels go up, right? In my gameplay, that what I'm trying to get the players in a state of tactical creation, in which you are thinking of how your performance on the first stage is going to determine the second one, but not in a linear way, in which you have to do things this way. Very much it opens the door for you to create this or remix the song by not necessarily hitting everything the right way and finding the right solution, but finding a solution that is in line with the song, but makes it your own song. Also because the song itself will be changing how it sounds, depending on how you are like creating the second stage level.
So is there like multiple ways to win a stage, a level?
Right. That would be ideally that's the key. And I don't even want to have them all figured out. Like the point is and I'm making it really hard for myself, but I think that like the vision itself is there, and then I'll figure out how to make it happen. But it's not that I know the solutions, but that the gameplay itself allow the users to create their own solutions, because they'll be able to design their own platform level. So it has to be flexible enough in which, even though there will be a solution, which will be hit all the notes right in a certain pattern, and then you have built a second level that then you can traverse. But then the user can do their own thing and be like, I'm going to skip this note. I'm not going to play that note, and I'm going to play this other note, but I'm going to play it differently. And then it's going to be a different level for them. So then it will give the opportunity for the player to be designing a game within this framework, but they have to do it in a certain time frame, and they have to do it within the structure of the rhythm. So it's given a framework within which they can work, but it has to be flexible enough.
And it's kind of endless amount of content, especially because the player can do n number of different levels, but they're actually creating this music. So there's still a basic level of music, but the player is essentially going through the game design where each one of them, there's multiple different endings essentially for every level. Right. Is there a point system that guards that? Or is there like, are they aligning to anything, or are they just kind of creating something that sounds like music essentially each level?
Right. That's, I mean, the informing aspect to it, again, this is all very up in the air still, but yeah, I like the idea more, even if it has a score system. I'm not that focused on the score. Like, I don't think that should be the focus. The focus should be on whether it works or not. So then the music, but it cannot be ugly. You know what I'm saying? Like, it cannot be that they're building this level that is traversable, but then the song sounds terrible. So that's why, as long as I'm keeping the rhythm and I'm keeping the scales right, there's enough variability to how the sound makes. Like, it doesn't even have to be that you're changing the notes that you're playing. It's just how those notes change. how those notes sound, and that plays into the
Oh.
aspect that he has a futuristic instrument. So if I play the same song on an electric guitar, even if I'm playing the same exact notes and I'm playing at the exact same time, they're gonna sound different. But I can
Yes.
be this guitar or this other guitar, and it can have this level of distortion or this other level. So
Yes.
I'm playing more with that, in which it has to be flexible enough, in which each player's way of designing the second stage sounds good, but it's different each time. So somebody, by placing these different pieces in these different notes, is distorting those notes to a different way of making it sound. So imagine, again, it's all up in there, so I don't know exactly if it's going to end up being like this, of how, because that's the hard part, how to actualize that. But imagine that it's like, if you place this type of block in this place, it makes the note sound more like an electric note, or it makes the bass, it boosts the bass in this,
Oh,
or it
wow.
makes it sound like this. So then you're hearing this Spanish Romance song, which most of them, if
Yeah.
you search
Yeah.
them, like this great guy Joaquin Diaz, who put music to all these songs throughout his career, and you can hear it's kind of the same, usually like classical Spanish guitar, and it follows that pattern. But I imagine in my head, and I see that vision of like, I can follow that same structure, and even if you play the same notes, but changing even the instrument or the way those notes sound can make the song very original without breaking the song. And that's the main focus. That is the challenge for me
So
as
like
the
essentially
creator.
you're talking about endless amounts of different types of instruments that you could sound like. You could take this old song, and I guess you could actually take any kind of song, but you're focused on the Spanish
But
songs,
I'm focused on that. Yeah,
right?
exactly.
And so you could technically take any songs and really iterate into any different kind. So you could make a classical song into like a modern rock
Exactly.
song,
That's
and how
exactly
you play the level is how it
yeah.
impacts how it sounds, and how it sounds is how it impacts the wow. And really, you could
Exactly.
that's like a we shouldn't even think about it as multiple endings, because it's like an endless amount of content. You could just iterate the amount of songs.
It's the variability. It's kind of like you're not the song is because especially because the song is very every song in every Romance song is very narrative based. Like it's telling a story. Like for example, one of my favorite ones is telling the story of this count who is singing to a princess, and then the queen is upset that he's in love with the princess because he's not of royal blood. So there's a story, and then the prince dies, the princess dies of sadness, and then out of them both grows a plant, and then they become birds. So there's a very so it's not that you're changing that story, which is what the song is telling you. It's that you're changing how it sounds, but it has a consequence. You can't just do it willy-nilly like you're making a remix. It has to translate into a playable level. So that's what I want. I want so imagine each player is going to have, imagine they can post, oh, this is how I did this level, and I made it work, because that's what is important.
First of all, that's great for the users to be able to say, hey, I created this type of content because I created this custom song. You could actually, first of all, you could extend this to more than just the initial base, but then I know that you could add tons of different songs in there, because essentially it's all unlimited amount of content that you created, right?
Like he could travel to another dimension. Exactly. Like the aspect itself is very modular, because then the guy can travel to, I don't know, to the future and be like future songs. So it can be in the present, and now he's remixing these present day songs within the same gameplay loop, which is you have a song that you have to traverse, but you remixing it and you modifying it without breaking the song, and at the same time it has to work within a gameplay aspect of traversing the platform level.
How are you going about like building this type of system? Is it like is it a complicated thing to build, or like you're still in the early stages?
I mean, it sounds to me like it's going to be complicated, but I'm excited to figure it out. Like I mean, that's what drives me. I have the vision of what I want the end product to be like, and it's still evolving. Like, but that is what drives me. It's like, how do I now figure out because it goes back to this many things that I have to be careful with, which is it has to be flexible enough for the user to be creative, but it cannot be too flexible that it breaks the song and makes something that it's not good. So it's kind of letting the player do its thing, but within rails, so that they can be creative, but they can be like, wow, this sounds great, and they can have that feeling of actualization, because that I think is also part of the creative aspect. Like great artists through history are not the ones that are super out there, because it's like if you go too much out there, you disconnect yourself from the beauty of it, and you just think that because you're an artist you have some type of you can decide what is art and what is beauty, and that's not right. Like I think what makes great art is the person that takes the beauty of things, the proportions, and then makes it their own. They give it their own aspect, and then you look at it and they're like, wow, this is beautiful, but in such a different way. And that's kind of what I'm trying to, or what is shaping up to be this project, is is the idea of conveying that to the player, that when you're an artist, you're not just on your little vacuum of like, oh, I'm creative. You're creative because you are given a series of beautiful creations by other people, and now you're making it your own.
That's actually a really beautiful kind of motive, and actually talks a little bit about, like, how good artists copy, great artists steal. And
yeah.
I mean, if you just reframe that, I mean, like, every artist starts from a foundation, and the ultimate foundation is God, because God is, all creation belongs to God, right?
That's a good point.
But
yeah,
right, like, and we see, okay, so if we have these beautiful Spanish songs, we want to, kind of push forward the culture. Now we could take those songs and we could say, let's make this essentially this very customized system. See, one of the things I wanted to mention was, I don't think there's another game in the market that's like this. Like, I don't
know.
there
That's
isn't
I'm trying to make it very different.
Yeah, like, that's actually kind of interesting, because I could think of a couple of games that are like in the musical sphere, but I can't think of one that is at this level of. It's not like you need a breadth of content; you need more of a custom system, and this is a very interesting system.
That's what really has to work, is the system. The loop itself of what I've been saying, just like making it flexible enough, but that it doesn't break it. But that's what I'm trying to innovate on. I guess it's how do I make that work, in which it's a rhythm game, but it's a creative platform maker basically, and then you actually have to platform through it. So you being a game developer and a musician at the same time. So yeah.
Well, let me ask you this.
Yeah.
Kind of I'll shift a little bit, right? Is, let's say that someone is in a position where they're super passionate about their project. They feel like it's got the legs to stand. What advice would you give them about deciding whether they should go full and pursue their dream, or like, like, how would you give advice to maybe a young Gabe, essentially, right? That's like, hey, I love to make games. I want to take the plunge. What would you say to that person in terms of advice?
Yeah, I think. I mean, I think the main advice to everybody, and I don't mean to sound like a cop. I'll elaborate a little bit more on details, but like the main advice that I think is good for everybody is to pray. Like I don't mean, but it's true. It's like I don't know the circumstances of anybody, and I know God is real, and I know God loves you. So the main thing you can do that will help you, like, tremendously, because He has helped me. I can tell you from experience, and like it's not just me, but people through histories, to build a relationship with God and let God guide you in that respect, and then you learn the way to take that plunge. And then the second aspect, which is a derivation and also a motive for prayer, is the losing of the fear. And prayer helps you in that too. It's like, at the end of the day, what motivates me to do what I do, it's the idea that one day I will die. Like contemplating death, it's a very important thing in life, because it gives you an understanding of when your days end, which they will, are you gonna be happy with what you did or what you tried to do? Because that really is ultimately all that matters. Like how you lived your life. So that's what I would say to people that are in that point and they're like, oh, I don't know if I should take the plunge. It's like, what is really holding you back? And you analyze it. Because if there was holding you back is that you have these responsibilities that you have to take care of, then that is the reason. That is a good reason to do this or that. But the spirit that drives you to want to do this, like I want to follow this project, you will find a way to make it work. It's just it looks different for different people because people have different circumstances. So I'm not gonna sit here and tell people, stop working and start just now do what I did, quit your job, don't make any money, move to your parents' house and not start projects and stream on Twitch. No, because that doesn't work for everybody. And I don't think that's a responsible thing to advise anybody. So it's really just letting that spirit within you, which it's informing your direction, and then follow it within the circumstances. And then by living by being a righteous person, trying to be, you will find the way that makes it make sense for you. Because it's like, if you have that spirit within you that is driving you, that you like, I feel like I want to make this, like if you examine that, it really is a vocation for you. You have to give this to the world. Then the second stage of that is figuring out how to make that work. And that looks different depending on the circumstances. Like for me now, it looks like this, but as my life evolves, it would look differently. Like if God allows it and like things become more successful with Rosarium, with this project, with the next, that will take a different look, so you'll have a different look, and I'll have to, maybe now I work with a studio and now I'm responsible for a series of employees. So then that takes a different shape. But I'm playing within the circumstances that I have today. I don't know if tomorrow I'll be here. So I'm just working with what is it that I want to do today that informs that spirit and that shapes that spirit into an actualization. So my advice to people is that just follow your spirit within the context of your circumstances. And the best way to do that is through prayer. because then you're in a dialogue with God. God learns
Amen.
from you, like, you know, you're expressing to God your circumstances, your worries,
Hmm.
and then you are, but you're still striving towards sanctity in that respect, towards that vocation of
Hmm.
being that person that God put you to be in this world, be that what it may, a creative aspects, or in any other aspect in your life.
Amen.
So yeah, I think
Amen.
just don't be afraid. Just don't be afraid, because there's nothing
Amen.
to fear but the idea of not living your life. You cannot be so worried about your life that you don't live it. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Hmm.
you have to use it.
Yeah, that's a beautiful way to end that, because it's like, yeah, you cannot be so afraid of your life that, sorry, you cannot be so afraid. Well, I would say this: all philosophy,
Mm.
if you think about it, all philosophy, all religion starts at death, right? It
Yeah,
has to make sense of death, and like we all have to die one day, so might as well
yeah,
just live how we were supposed to be living. um
yeah.
well, Gabe, look, I know we're pretty much at the hour, so I don't
Uh-huh.
want to take too much of your time. I
No,
love
uh-huh.
the
Mhm.
I love the game design angle. I think
Thank
that
you.
this thing has the Lexus, and I really felt the energy when you were talking about it. I was like, this really feels like a really unique game. Um, if people wanted to get in touch with you, where would they go?
Yeah.
What can they do?
Yeah, they can find me either on Twitch at Cordero Católicos, like how it spells on my name here.
Hmm.
And you can find me also on YouTube as Cordero Católico. I also have an Instagram account, a TikTok account. I post there like every day a little quote from some doctors of the church, or people that
Hmm.
throughout their history have lived the faith. And then I post every day to a flat, like the flower of the day that is developing Rosarium. So you guys can find me in any of those social media, like Cordero Católico, which basically means Catholic lamb, because I think it's a beautiful image to guide your life through, which is just like
Amen.
you're a sacrificial creature that you're offering yourself up for other people and for God.
Hmm.
And then yeah, and then you can also go to rosarium.app to check out specifically the project of Rosarium.
Hmm.
And then yeah, you can find me around. Yeah.
Amen. Well, thank you guys so much for tuning in. I had an incredibly fun time talking to Gabe. We talk actually on a weekly basis, so I love talking to Gabe. He's building an awesome app with the Rosarium. You guys should all go download it. Even if you're not a Catholic, you should download it and just check it out to see, the kind of things that go inside the game design, the kinds of things that go into building these kinds of projects, because it's really important that we highlight, our faith-based creators that are actually building in tech. So, by the way, don't forget to like and subscribe to the video. It really helps. And we thank you so much for tuning in, guys. And we'll see you soon. The next episode. Bye.